The night it happened, my salon smelled like eucalyptus and warm towels. We'd had a full book, 12 appointments back to back, and my last client had just walked out with a blowout so good she tipped me $40 cash and said she was going to cry. I remember standing at the reception desk, counting down the drawer, thinking, this is it. This is exactly what I built. My business partner Fiona was in the back room, sterilizing tools and humming something off key. My assistant, a 22-year-old named Zara, who I'd trained from scratch, was sweeping the floor in slow circles like she was half asleep. The overhead lights had dimmed to the warm after-hours setting. Rain was starting outside. Everything was exactly right. Then the front door opened. I didn't look up immediately. We were closed. The sign was flipped. The door was supposed to be locked. I assumed Zara had forgotten to throw the deadbolt. I kept my eyes on the register. Ivy. My father's voice. After 3 years of silence, it landed in that room like something thrown through glass. I looked up. He was standing in the doorway in his gray wool coat, the one he'd worn to my college graduation 7 years ago. My mother was behind him, one step back, holding her purse with both hands the way she does when she's nervous but doesn't want to show it, and next to her, my brother, Seth. Taller than I remembered, heavier, wearing the expression he always wears when he knows he's done something wrong and is waiting to see if anyone's going to call him on it. 3 years, not a single call, not a text on my birthday, not a word when I signed the lease on this place, when I renovated it, when I opened. My mother had sent a Facebook message the week of my grand opening that said, "Heard you opened a salon, congratulations," with a period at the end, like punctuation could make 3 years of nothing feel civil. I hadn't responded, and now here they were, in my salon. After close, in the rain. Zara had stopped sweeping. She was looking at me. I gave her a look that said it's fine, go to the back. She went. I heard Fiona stop humming. I set down the cash I was counting, straightened up, and said, "We're closed." My father stepped inside. He didn't wipe his shoes. "We need to talk," he said. "You should have called. Would you have answered?" I didn't say anything to that because we both already knew the answer. Let me back up, because none of this makes sense without the 3 years before it. I grew up in a house where Seth was the plan and I was the afterthought. I don't say that with bitterness anymore. I've done enough therapy to say it like a fact, the way you'd say we had a two-bedroom house or my dad worked in insurance. Seth was the firstborn son. In my family, that meant something that was never spoken out loud but was always, always present. The better school. The car at 16. The college fund that actually had money in it. I paid for my own cosmetology license. Took out a private student loan at 19, worked nights at a diner, and finished the program in 14 months. My parents came to the ceremony. My father shook my hand and said, "Well, now you have something to fall back on. Not congratulations, not I'm proud of you. Fall back on." Like the thing I'd worked double shifts for was a safety net, not a career. I spent the next 4 years building that career anyway. Worked at 2 different salons, saved everything I could, studied business at night, got my cosmetology manager's license. When I was 27, I found the space, a former dry cleaner on a commercial block in a neighborhood that was just starting to turn. The rent was high but manageable. I had enough saved for the security deposit and 3 months of overhead. It was going to be tight. I asked my parents for a loan. $40,000, structured with a repayment plan I'd written out in a spreadsheet. I remember sitting at their kitchen table with the printed document in a folder, feeling like I was pitching to investors. My father read through it. He nodded a few times. He said he'd think about it. 2 weeks later, he said no. "We don't have that kind of liquid cash right now," he told me, which I later found out was a lie, but at the time I believed it and I went and got a small business loan from a credit union instead, at a rate that wasn't great but was workable. I made it work. 6 months later, I found out that my father had given Seth $70,000 to invest in a sports bar franchise with two of his friends. No interest, no repayment terms, just $70,000 because Seth had asked, and Seth was Seth. I found out because Seth mentioned it at Thanksgiving casually, the way you mention something you assume everyone already knows. He was complaining that the franchise fees were higher than expected and he might need a little more. My father nodded sympathetically. I sat there with my green bean casserole and felt something go very quiet inside me. I didn't make a scene. I finished dinner, helped clear the table, and drove home. I didn't call my parents that week or the next. When my mother texted asking why I'd gone quiet, I told her I needed some space. She sent back a thumbs up emoji, which I think was meant to be supportive and landed like a slap. The space became a month, then 3 months. Then Seth's sports bar started failing, which honestly anyone could have seen coming. It was a franchise in a market that was already oversaturated. And suddenly my parents needed me to understand that family pulls together in hard times. My mother called. My father called. Seth actually called, which was notable because Seth had never in his adult life called me to ask how I was doing, only to ask for things. They wanted me to contribute to Seth's debt. Not a loan, a contribution, because I was doing well with my salon and it was a tough time for the family. I said no. The calls stopped. The silence that followed didn't feel like space. It felt like punishment. Like I was being put in a corner for not complying. My father sent one email, 3 weeks after I said no, that said, "Your mother is very hurt by your behavior. I hope you'll reconsider what family means to you." I read that email 4 times. Then I archived it and went back to work. That was 3 years ago. The salon kept growing. I hired Zara. I brought Fiona in as a partner when I expanded into the second suite. We added skincare services, a membership program, a waiting list for new clients. I had built the thing I said I was going to build, and I had done it without anyone's help, and I had stopped waiting for anyone to notice. Until the night they walked through my front door. I didn't invite them to sit down. My father sat down anyway in one of the reception chairs, like the chair was his idea. My mother perched on the edge of the one next to him. Seth stood near the door with his hands in his jacket pockets, not quite looking at me. Seth's investors are calling in the debt, my father said. He said it the way people say things they've been rehearsing, flat and quick, like if he got through it fast enough it would feel less terrible. The bar's been closed for 4 months. There's roughly 90,000 still outstanding. Okay, I said. We need help. I understood that from the fact that you're here. My mother made a small sound. My father's jaw tightened. Ivy, this is your brother? I'm aware. Family doesn't, Dad. I kept my voice even. I had decided, somewhere in the 30 seconds between hearing his voice and this moment, that I was not going to raise it. Not once. What exactly are you asking me for? He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. He set it on the reception desk between us and slid it toward me the way you slide something across a table in a negotiation, which I suppose was exactly what this was. I opened it. It was a document, not official, notarized, handwritten in my father's careful block printing, outlining a proposal that I would take on a partnership interest in their family LLC, which I had not known existed, and in exchange for that partnership interest, I would contribute $30,000 towards Seth's outstanding investor debt. The LLC, as far as I could tell from 2 pages of vague language, held essentially nothing except a small piece of land my grandfather had left my father 20 years ago. I read it twice. This isn't a legal document, I said. It's a starting point. It's a piece of paper where you're asking me to give you $30,000 for a share of something worth. I flipped the page. You have it listed evaluation. We'd work that out. I closed the folder. I set it back down on the desk. And if I say no? My father looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "Your lease is up for renewal in 5 months. I felt the room temperature drop by about 10 degrees. Or maybe that was just me. I've spoken to your landlord, my father continued. Raymond Howell. I know Raymond. We were in Rotary together years ago. He mentioned he'd had some interest from a larger tenant for this block. Said he hadn't committed to anything yet, but that he was weighing his options. The word extortion moved through my mind like a slow train. You're telling me, I said carefully, that if I don't give you $30,000, you're going to call my landlord and encourage him not to renew my lease. I'm telling you that Raymond and I are going to have coffee next week, and I imagine your situation might come up. Seth was still looking at the floor. My mother said, Ivy, please, we just need you to think about what's right for this family. I looked at her for a long moment. She had the expression she always gets when she wants something and doesn't want to be the one asking for it. A kind of soft helplessness that I had spent most of my childhood trying to ease. I wasn't 20 years old anymore. Give me until end of business tomorrow, I said. I need to review this with my attorney. My father nodded like that was reasonable, like he was being patient. They stood, all three of them, and my father picked up his folder and buttoned his coat. And my mother gave me a look that was probably meant to be conciliatory, and my brother walked out without saying a word to me. Not one word. And the door closed behind them, and the rain was still coming down, and Fiona appeared from the back room doorway and said very quietly, "Do you want me to call someone?" "No," I said. "I need to make a call." I called my attorney that night. Her name is Patricia Olson. She's been my business attorney since I signed my lease, and she is not someone who panics. I told her everything. The document, my father's comments about my landlord, the history. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Forward me the photo of that document. And can you get a recording of anything they've said, going forward?" "I'll try." The landlord comment is the critical piece. If he made that statement in front of witnesses, my business partner was in the back. I don't know how much she heard. Ask her. And Ivy, contact your landlord yourself. Tonight if you can, first thing tomorrow at the latest. Don't let your father get there first. I called Raymond Howell at 8:30 in the morning. He picked up on the second ring. He did not sound like a man who had been contacted by my father. He sounded like a man who was eating breakfast and mildly surprised to hear from a tenant at 8:30. I explained, concisely and professionally, that I had reason to believe someone might contact him to negatively influence my lease renewal, and that I wanted to reach out proactively to express my interest in renewing and my track record as a tenant. I mentioned that I'd paid on time every month for 4 years, had invested significantly in the space, and would welcome the opportunity to discuss terms. Raymond Howell said, "I don't know what you're referring to, but you've been an excellent tenant and I wasn't planning on going anywhere with this space. Let's set up a meeting." I set up the meeting. Then I sat in my car in the parking lot for a few minutes, breathing. Then I called Patricia back. "He wasn't contacted," I said. "Good," she said. "That means they were bluffing, or your father hadn't made the call yet. Either way, you've neutralized it. Now here's what I want you to understand." She walked me through it. What my father had said constituted attempted extortion under our state's criminal code. It had been said in front of at least one witness. I could file a report if I chose to. She also told me that the document, the partnership interest proposal, while not legally binding, was still a written demand connected to a threat, and that together they painted a very specific picture. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I thought about it for about 4 seconds. "I want to handle it myself," I said. "One more conversation, and then whatever they do next, we respond to accordingly." They came back the following evening. I had asked them to, texted my father that I've reviewed the document and wanted to discuss. He responded within 3 minutes, which told me everything about how confident he felt. I had asked Fiona to stay. I had my phone recording in my apron pocket, which Patricia had confirmed was legal under our state's single-party consent law. They sat down in the reception area again. My father had a small leather portfolio this time, like he was arriving for a business meeting. Seth was there again. My mother had not come. "I've had time to review everything," I said. I stayed behind the reception desk. I didn't sit. "And," my father said, "and I want to show you something first." I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. It was thin, 3 pages, printed, paper-clipped. 3 years ago," I said. "When Seth's sports bar first started having trouble, I did some research. I looked into the SBA loan that had been taken out to cover some of the initial losses. I have a copy of it here." I set the first page on the desk. Specifically, I want to point to page 2, where the emergency guarantor is listed. My father looked down at the page. He went very still. My name, I said, is on this document as a secondary loan guarantor. I did not sign this document. I was not present when this document was signed. I did not give consent to be listed on this document. I stuck the second page on the desk. This is a statement from my attorney outlining what that constitutes under federal law: loan fraud, forgery. I'll spare you the reading, but the relevant portions are highlighted. Seth had gone pale. My father's hand, I noticed, was resting flat and very still on his knee. This loan is in default, I continued, which means technically creditors could come after me, which means I have already been harmed by this document, regardless of whether I knew about it. My attorney filed a protective declaration with the credit union this morning separating me from this debt. That process is underway. I set the third page down. This is a formal notice drafted by my attorney that I will be pursuing a fraud claim related to the unauthorized use of my name if the matter is not resolved. Resolution, in this case, means the following: Seth takes full legal and financial responsibility for the outstanding investor debt. My name is removed from all documents associated with his business, and no member of this family contacts my landlord, my business partners, or any of my professional contacts regarding my business affairs. The room was very quiet. My father said, "Ivy, you need to understand, I'm not finished." I kept my voice exactly the same temperature it had been since they walked in. Not cold, not angry, just level. "I'm not doing this to hurt you. I want you to hear that. But I'm also not going to give you $30,000 that I earned, and I'm not going to let you use my livelihood as leverage, and I'm not going to pretend that what was done with my name on that document is something we can just set aside because Seth needs help." I paused. If Seth needs help, there are options: a payment plan with the investors, a consultation with a bankruptcy attorney. I can give you Patricia's number. She can refer you to someone who handles that, but the help is not coming from me. My father looked at Seth. Seth was looking at the floor. And then, and this is the part I've turned over in my mind probably 100 times since, my father just nodded. Not in agreement, exactly. More like a man who has just realized that the door he thought was unlocked is in fact bolted shut, and the realization has exhausted him. He picked up his portfolio. He stood. "We'll be in touch," he said. "Through attorneys," I said. "Please." He looked at me for a moment. There was something in his face I hadn't expected. Not anger, not even pride. Something more like the beginning of recognition, and it came too late, and we both knew it. They left. Patricia did receive a call from my father's attorney 6 days later. It was brief. They had no legal standing to pursue me, and they knew it. The loan fraud matter was resolved through the credit union without further action once my protective declaration was in place and it became clear we were prepared to go further. My father did not call Raymond Howe, or if he did, Raymond never mentioned it, and my lease was renewed at a 2% increase, which was below market rate because Raymond is a reasonable person and I am a tenant who pays on time. I haven't spoken to my father or Seth since that night. My mother texted me 3 weeks later. Not an apology, exactly, more of a, "I hope things can be different someday," and I read it and thought about it for a long time before I replied. I wrote back, "I hope so too. I'm not there yet. Please give me time." She sent a heart emoji. I didn't know what to do with that, so I put my phone down and went back to the salon where Zara was doing a balayage consultation, and Fiona was laughing at something in the back, and the eucalyptus diffuser was going, and we had a full book for the week and the week after. I've thought a lot about what people expect from a story like this. The dramatic confrontation, the tearful family breakdown, the moment where someone says, "I'm sorry," and means it, and the music swells. That's not what I got. And I used to think that was a failure of resolution, like something had been left incomplete. But I've come to understand that the resolution was quieter than that and more real. It was the moment my father picked up his portfolio and stood up, and I didn't move, and I didn't soften it, and I didn't reach after him the way I'd spent 31 years reaching. That was the moment I stopped carrying it. The salon closes at 7 on weekdays. By 7:15, it's usually just me and Fiona finishing up. We turn the lights down and count the drawer and talk about nothing important, And sometimes I'll stand at the front window for a minute before I lock up, looking out at the street, the traffic moving past. The building I signed a lease on when I was 27 years old and terrified and certain that if I just worked hard enough, it would be enough. It was enough. It turned out it was enough. Not because anyone came around and recognized it, just because it was. I've spent a lot of time thinking about why it took me so long to stop waiting for my family to see me clearly. Not with bitterness, I'm past that, but with genuine curiosity. Because I think a lot of people know exactly what that waiting feels like. You keep showing up, keep trying, keep leaving room for something to shift, and you tell yourself that's what love looks like: patience, availability, grace. What I've come to understand is that there's a difference between grace and disappearing. And for a long time, I had been disappearing, making myself smaller, asking for less, absorbing the message that Seth's needs were the real needs and mine were the inconvenient ones, while calling it grace. What my father did the night he walked into my salon wasn't a surprise. Not really. People who have always had leverage over you don't stop reaching for leverage just because you've grown. They reach harder, actually, because your growth makes them feel the distance more. He came in with a folder and a threat, because that's the only language that had ever worked with me. He expected me to fold because I always had before. I didn't fold, and I think the reason I didn't, the real reason, not the polished version, is that I had spent 3 years building something that was entirely mine. Every decision in that salon, from the eucalyptus and the diffuser to the membership tiers to the way I structured Fiona's partnership agreement, came from my own judgment. Nobody handed it to me. Nobody co-signed my vision. And when you spend years making real decisions with real consequences, something changes in you. You stop asking for permission. Not aggressively, just structurally. It's no longer a mode you operate in. That's what my father didn't understand when he sat down in my reception chair. He was still dealing with the version of me who needed his approval. That version had been gone for a while. The document Patricia helped me prepare wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that. It wasn't about punishing Seth or humiliating my father or winning some family argument that had been running for 30 years. It was just accountability, the clean, unromantic kind. Here is what was done. Here are the consequences. Here is what needs to happen now. No drama, no raised voices, just the facts, organized clearly with a lawyer's name at the bottom. I think that's what ethics actually looks like in practice, outside of theory. Not grand moral gestures, just refusing to pretend that wrong things are fine, even when pretending would be easier. The intelligence piece. Calling Raymond before my father could, having Patricia on the phone that same night, knowing what single-party consent laws meant in our state. That wasn't luck either. That was the result of years of paying attention, of treating my business seriously, of learning things I didn't strictly need to know but wanted to understand anyway. Knowledge isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It just sits there waiting until the moment you actually need it, and then it's either there or it isn't. Resilience is quieter than people expect. It's not the moment you fight back. It's the 1,000 small moments before that. The mornings you open the salon when you're exhausted. The decisions you make when no one's watching. The way you keep going, not because you're certain it'll work out, but because stopping is not something you're willing to do. That's what I had built. And that's why, when my father stood up and picked up his portfolio, I didn't reach after him. I had stopped needing to.